Namaskar. Today we are going to discuss about the man-made disasters and what are the classification, how it happens, and what mitigation measures are required to be taken. Earlier, we discussed about natural disasters where geological, hydrological and meteorological disasters were discussed. Now, let us discuss about the chemical, industrial and nuclear disasters, accident-related disasters and biological disasters. If we see worldwide, many of the industrial, chemical and nuclear disasters have taken place. But in India, 1984, due to the leakage of missile isocyanate, more than lot of people, they were killed. The history of chemical disasters and industrial disasters are not new to India. Certain disasters have been reported, certain disasters are not. Bhopal gas tragedy 1984, MIS leakage. Cochin 1984, hexacyclopentadiene, 200 people were killed. In Bombay 1988, fire and explosion killed 35 people. Similarly, in Bombay itself, in 1988, oil refinery, 35 people were killed. Madhavan Khint, 1991, explosion and fire killed 93 people. Bombay Ahmedabad highway, 1991, LPG explosion and fire, 100 people were killed. Kalyan, in 1993, sulfuric acid leakage and about 49 people were killed. So the disaster and the history of man-made disasters, it is not new to India, and because of our ignorance, carelessness, lack of safety practices, we keep on suffering from many type of disasters. What is the status of nuclear disasters? We have certain establishment for nuclear reactors like Trombay, in Karwar also, Kaiga power plant is there where nuclear power is generated, and lot of precautions are taken. Fortunately, in India, we have not come across any nuclear disasters. But yes, many of the disaster events have taken place worldwide, where the Chernobyl nuclear disasters, it was one of the major nuclear explosion, and because of that many of the people, they were killed and exposed to the nuclear radiation. So very much important that how we can take care of industrial episodes, nuclear episodes and chemical exposure episodes. If we talk about the major industrial hazards, primarily we categorize into the fire, explosion and toxic release. If we are talking about fire, there are different type of fires that might be flash fire, jet fire, pool fire. And talking about explosion, BLEVE and VCE. BLEVE means boiling liquid expanding vapor cloud explosion and vapor cloud explosion. So these are two type of explosion. Because of that there is an impact and people are killed, the buildings are damaged because of that. So there are two things. One is your fire, that is the heat and impact. Two components, if they join together, then maximum losses will be experienced. Apart from that, there might be toxic release also. Toxic release, one of the example is Bhopal gas tragedy. And in Bhopal gas tragedy, thousands of people died and people were, more than that, the people were exposed to the methyl isocyanate. And chemical was released and people were not knowing what to do and what not to do during that exposure to that methyl isocyanate, and this led to loss of many of the lives. It is very important, whenever you are living in the area, you must know what are the major hazard units and toxic substances which are stored in the area, and what precautions you need to take, whom to report, what action plan the storage authority has made it for you. You must be aware of it. Once you are aware and you get the symptoms, you can take action against it. Generally, the people say, once there is a gas release or some sort of toxic release, you must keep a wet cloth on your nose. It can make you safe, but you need to understand the chemical properties of that particular substance. Might be for methyl isocyanate, it was a safe game. Once you are putting the wet clothes, it is going to be absorbed in the water and the impacts can be minimized or nullified. But if there is a chlorine gas release, whether this particular option that putting the wet clothes on your face is going to protect you, no, it will be more lethal once you will be doing such type of things. So in nutshell, I can say one thing, that we need to have a antidote which is well defined. You can talk to any industrial safety organization and they will tell you what type of hazardous substances which are stored in your area and what action is required to be taken. So fire, explosion and toxic release, combining all, it is coming under the major industrial hazard. You can see especially LPG gases, the flash fire, jet fire and pool fire, BLEVE and VCE are mostly happening, and many of the cases have been reported about the BLEVE and VCE, vapor cloud explosion. Suppose if these are the scenarios and these are the negative impacts due to this particular explosion, heat and toxic release, then what we need to do? The first thing we require to do is that land use planning. As I told in the earlier sessions also, that for any type of disaster, there is a requirement of hazard zoning, land use planning, and in industrial disaster also, land use planning is very important. And suppose, look at the Bhopal gas tragedy. Earlier, once it was incepted, it was planned miles away from the core city area, but the developmental control was not imposed on that, and because of that, people, for their convenience, they tried to make settlements near to the industrial area, and because of that, the most people were affected by the release and inhalation of the methyl isocyanate. If major hazard units are there or hazardous substances are stored, there are certain rules and regulations, building bylaws, and also the developmental policies are there. That particular policy is required to be followed, and no further development should take place near to the hazardous substances where it has been stored. Then the second is then making the on-site and off-site emergency management plans. What do you mean by on-site and off-site emergency management plan? On-site, in a way, if you have certain chemicals, industries which is having a threat, which is having certain hazardous substances, then in case it leaks, in case it fails, or it comes to the open atmosphere, what action is required to be taken, and within the campus of that particular hazardous substances, who will be doing what, how the control, the impact will be nullified or it will be controlled. Those things are coming under on-site emergency management planning. And off-site, once situation has aggravated, people outside the campus have been affected, what is required to be done? What action the community will take, how there will be a coordination between the different outside agencies, even the community and your inside agencies, how they will tie up together, how they will come up with the plan, and how they will rescue, evacuation, search, rescue, evacuation, and whatsoever activities are required, it will be done. Those components, those activities are coming under off-site emergency management plan, and mostly it is driven by the community awareness. Suppose if you are in some hazard prone area, where the chemical substances or you can say toxic substances are stored. Everybody, it is the right of everybody that person should know what is the antidote, what are the symptoms if the gas is green, if it is the transparent, if there is no color to the gas, but there is a very noxious smell is there, then what type of gas it might be, and if the gas has been leaked, what they should do and what they should not do. That should be completely given in the community awareness programs. Enforcing the strict industrial policies and the laws. Nowadays, the industrial policies, safety policies are become tighter day by day, but it is required that in all areas, especially the urban areas where the density of population is very high, it is required to be taken strictly. So these are the remedial measures you required to know about it, and you have to handle all the chemicals, all the industrial hazards very cautiously and carefully. So this was all about your industrial, chemical and nuclear disasters. Now let us come to the accident related, man-made accidents. All type of fires, might be it is urban fire, it is village fire, forest fire, electrical disasters and fire, associated fires, these all are coming under the accident related disasters. Then terrorist activities like serial bomb blast, might be festival related disasters, like you might be knowing that many times in the Kumbh festival or Kumbh Mela there is a absolute stampede. Recently in Nasik there was a Kumbh Mela and about 10 people died, especially the children and the women, they died due to the stampede. Also stampedes have taken place in Kumbh Mela earlier, but in 2005 there was a Mandar Devi stampede. You might be remembering the Upahar Cinema Theatre stampede and many of the other stampede. Recently there was a Andhra Pradesh, there was a stampede episode where in the religious temple there was a huge gathering and all of a sudden it transformed into the stampede. So stampede is also one of the important disaster that the crowd management and other things are required to be taken into account. Then coming to the transport and aviation related disasters, where rail, road, air accidents are there. Boat capsizing, if you go and if you concentrate on eastern part of India like Bihar, West Bengal, Orissa, sometimes in Assam, there is always a boat capsizing because mostly the people are traveling by the boats crossing the rivers banks. So there also we are finding the boat capsizing. Mine flooding, many times mines are flooded with water and due to that people die out of it. Building collapse, major building collapse. In Bombay I can cite some examples. Several buildings, rather many of the buildings every year collapse without earthquake or any type of dynamics of disaster. So these are the basically man-made accidental disasters. What we need to do for this? We can go for a strict follow-up of the building bylaws to control urban and slum fires, because fires are very predominant in the urban area, especially slums. Also during the festive season, like festivals like Durga Puja, Ganesh Puja, there pandals are made, and if precautions are not taken appropriately, we are finding the pandals are catching into the fire and many people are losing their life or lot of properties are damaged. So strict building bylaws are required to be taken into account and control urban and slum fires. That is very important. Second thing is the security surveillance. Serial bomb blast, or we can say it's a stampede, festival related stampedes. There we are finding that because of this many of the people they lose their life, and if the strong and very planned security systems are there, then you will be finding that less and less such type of accidents will take place. community awareness. If you are going to the mob, if you are in the crowd, what you should do, what you should not do, what type of strategy you should adopt, that should be aware to all the community. Your security is in your hand. Don't think only the government is responsible for making you safe and secure. You need to have your own security. If you sit in the train, every time it is written, please take care and just look below before taking the place in the train or the buses. How many of us try to see that what nuisance is kept below my seat? It is very much required that self-awareness will make you more safer. So government is doing their duty, but also community is also responsible for making themselves safe. So community awareness is very, very important. Enforcing strict industrial policies. Industrial safety policies are very much required, and nowadays, day by day, industrial safety security policies are coming strict and strict. So it really helps in controlling and mitigating and preventing the chances of accidents. Road safety, I can tell you that average 3,700 people die every year due to the natural disasters, but just compare it with the road accidents. This year the data has been portrayed that more than 1 lakh people are dying because of the road accidents. So once you are comparing with the 3,700 people with the 1 lakh, you can see that how much is the difference and how critical that road safety is there for the community. Establishing the local response centers. You need to see that local response centers, what type of local response you require to have. Many of the urban areas, we are finding that the fire brigades and the columns of the fire brigade, they are not existing in the highly populated area. So there is a requirement that emergency response centers should be near to the highly populated area. Then coming to the biological disasters. We have earlier discussed that in the biological disaster, all biological disasters, epidemics are coming, pest attacks, cattle epidemics and food poisoning. They are in totality making the biological disaster, group of biological disasters. We have epidemics, talking about cholera, talking about Kalajar, talking about chikungunya or dengue fever. These are the epidemics, like it is happening and it is spreading in a vast area and sometimes taking the shape of the pandemics. Last 2 years we have found that chikungunya, it is spreading in the central part of India, covering many of the states. So there is a requirement of awareness among the community how we can really prevent such type of disasters. Might be chikungunya, it is not killing anyone, but the morbidity period, it increases substantially, that a person has to take a rest for about 30 days, 45 days. So if a person who is earning money and he is taking because of the morbidity he cannot work, then you can imagine how much pressure will be there on his family and the economy as a whole. So that is also important, and there is a requirement that people should be aware about it. Pest attacks, mostly pest attacks are not affecting human lives, infrastructures, but it badly affects your crops, and maybe because of that there will be a huge crisis of crops and the cereals, and also it adversely impacts the economy of the farmers. So there is a requirement that a lot of initiatives are required to be taken. Cattle epidemics, anthrax, maybe your bird flu, maybe some other type of disaster which is among that mad cow disease, which is among, it is spread within that cattle, and maybe there are some sort of disaster or the biological epidemics that is transferred from animal to the human being. So that is more lethal and very critical. So those things we have to take into account. And food poisoning, that is also one of the major issue which is happening, and people are dying or people are getting critical out of it. How we can really control the biological disasters? Biological disasters, health surveillance is very important, and especially after disaster like floods, maybe your earthquakes, might be landslides, after, or even I can say drought also, the malnutrition is there. But what type of precautions we require to take? There is a requirement of absolute a better surveillance system. So once you will be having the surveillance system, you will be performing better, and you can immediately catch and track what is the basic problem and how it is happening, and you can search immediately for the remedial measures. Then you need to have the health disaster management planning, so that even something goes wrong, what mechanism you have, what is the reporting system you have, what is the research facilities you have to track it down and immediately search for the remedial measures that is very important. So you require to have more about it. And then in totality, if you talk about either man-made disasters like accidents, industrial, nuclear, chemical disasters, or biological disasters, what common factors we need to take up? One is that hazard mapping. If there is a biological disasters, like, okay, this is the area which is prone to malaria, this is the area which is also prone to chikungunya, and this is the area which is also prone to XYZ diseases. So what preventive measures, what proactive measures are required to be taken, you should take into account. You need to have a district level, village level, taluka level disaster management plans, so that whenever it is happening, what you need to do, prior to that what actions are required to be taken, or if at all it happens, then what actions you will be taking, so that the people or the community will go back to the normal condition. So this is one important issue that we need to do, and the crux and the key for successful disaster management, it is lying with your removing the ignorance of community, creating the awareness, creating the knowledge, creating the skills to combat with the disaster. So community awareness as a whole, it is very important for combating with the disaster situation. So today we discussed about the man-made disasters and the categories of disasters, what are the symptoms, how we can mitigate, what are the control mechanism for it, and this is the way we are now completing the man-made disaster and its management. Thank you very much.